Hi, everyone. Welcome to this rather impromptu. I'm not even going to call it an episode. I'm going to call it a segment of Higher Journeys and UAP and Beyond. Guys, we had to come on. I'm back with my co-host, Steve Mera. We wanted to share something with you that, as a matter of fact, I think a couple of you have caught this. Took us a little bit of time, but essentially, what I want to talk about is in episode 3, Steve, you and I had a fantastic conversation having to do with the hill as it relates
Mm.
to the telepathy tapes. We won't go into all of that. I'll put a little iCard so you can, if you haven't seen the episode, you can see it. But here's what happened, guys. About 29 or so minutes in, and I remember this, Steve. I remember as
I
I was
remember it, yeah.
talking, I could hear what sounded like children or a child talking in the background. And I thought to myself, Steve doesn't have any children, but and it wasn't loud, but it was noticeable. And I remember I was talking and I thought, should I tell him to close
Mm.
the door or no, let me just keep going. Okay, well, let it go. Upon playback, you and I both heard this child's voice in the background. It was quite clear, frankly.
Well, I
And you
remember hearing it. I do recall hearing it, but I just thought, see, what happened is between us, I thought it was at your end, that you
Yeah.
may have somebody there. And I thought, oh, I'm not going to be rude. I'm not going to turn around and say, you may have somebody there. It's bleeding through a little bit on the audio. I just thought, let's just run with it because it's about being critical at the time. But you thought the same for me.
I thought
There
the
was
same for you.
nobody here.
Yeah, absolutely.
just me.
So yeah, it's so interesting. I actually I took just a couple of notes on some terms that I wanted to look at. We're not going to get into that just yet, but I want to, let's do this because, like I said, y'all, this is totally impromptu. The question is, did we manage, by virtue of having this conversation, serendipitously hear what I'm going to loosely call spirit voice? Now, look, as much as we work in this field, Steve Mera and I both, and Steve has got a lot of years in hard psychological research, we're still both very pragmatic people, very judicious. And so we're not going to jump to any conclusions. But what we're going to do first is I'm going to hear you in the audience. I'm going to play a minute clip so you can hear the context of what I was talking about at the time. And then Steve was great with his great equipment to be able to amplify the voice in the background so you could hear it yourself. So without further ado, Steve, let me go ahead and play this 1 minute clip and then we can go right into the
Okay.
second clip that you amplify. Let's watch this. Speaking individuals' ability to transmit information psychically, to pick up on information. I want to note John Paul, who is the precious 6'8", I think he was 16 years old, non-speaking individual who was featured in the tapes, sadly passed away. I say sadly, but he after communicating to some of his friends telepathically from the other side, said this is exactly what he had to do. So sad may not be sad, of course, for the family and a lot of people. I was sad, but I want to touch on this. It was actually, I believe, episode 9, where I think I have the name of it here. Telepathy Across Dimensions, Death and Beyond goes into great detail about these individuals' incredible psychic capacity, including but not limited to precognitive skills. But particularly, this was sort of centered around John Paul's passing and how at the moment of his passing and subsequently, so many of his friends that he developed relationships with on the Hill got premonitions, and even at the time of his passing knew before their parents could even communicate to them that John Paul had passed. Okay, I wanted to put a little notation where you hear that faint voice coming in. But I wanted to Steve, give people a little bit of the context of what we were discussing at the time where this anomalous voice came through. Now, here's what I want to do, guys. I want to go right to the clip that this is what Steve put together and you'll be able to hear it for sure. Let's go ahead and play this. I believe episode 9, where I think I have the name of it here. Telepathy Across Dimensions. I believe episode 9, where I think I have the name of it here. Telepathy Across Dimensions. I think I have the name of it here. I think I have the name of it here. I think I have the name of it here. Okay, unusual audible of what sounds like a child was captured during our StreamYard show recording. Though the words said are hard to make out, it is clear that the recording captured someone else saying something whilst Alexis was talking. Both Steve and Alexis heard this happen at the time, and each thought there must have been a child present at each other's location. All right, I've done enough talking.
Well,
Explain what
okay.
happened.
So first things first. Yeah, you have to take in consideration. I'm using a head microphone, so what you are going to get is some reverb from me breathing because it's very close to the mouth. Yeah, but when I heard this, I kind of put it. Oh, let's just put it there. I'm thinking maybe there's somebody at your end because for me, that's a vocal response. I'm good at hearing vocal responses. And it's a bit like years ago when you used to bring people in during the Second World War to listen to radio hush coming from Germany. Nobody could hear anything. But as time went on, you could make out certain words. You could make out that's an audible. And that's what I've done because I've spent so many years in instrumental transcommunication and EVP, studies and experiments. I'm used to hearing something and going, that's an audible. Now, I thought it was a real audible from your end. You thought vice versa. That wasn't the case for you, nor myself.
No.
So afterwards, I was sat there thinking, I'm going to have to contact you because for me, that's how they sound. I've done experiments. We've obtained so much data regarding these communications that they sound a certain way. There's a certain tone to them, a certain frequency to them. And for me, that was like, that fits the bill. So that is why I ended up sometime later just sort of sending you a message. By the way, did you have somebody there?
And I was thinking the same thing, and I just kind of let it go. It didn't occur to me. And honestly, I think all things happen for a deeper reason. Obviously, I'm the type of person to say, okay, what was the purpose of this? Let me tell you something. It caused me, Steve, to do a little bit of research on this phenomenon, and I've had this happen before. I bet you have too, where you're immersed in a conversation about something. Maybe you're reading something, you're in a deep study about something, and invariably the very example of what you're either talking about or reading will play out right in front of you. And I looked up a term that I believe comes from Jungian psychology called enactment phenomenon. And it's referred to when something being discussed or explored starts to literally play out in real time, like the psyche projecting into the physical world. In a therapeutic or psychic context, it can be when themes or symptoms are spontaneously mirrored during a session or conversation. It's almost like a live dramatization orchestrated by the unconscious. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. If it's our expanded consciousness that helps do that, maintain it, I do not know. But what I do understand is that often when you look back and look at the time it took when it happened, I often think, well, why has it significantly happened then? We're 29 minutes into a discussion here. Why at 29 minutes? And we had just talked, and we're going to be talking about, and we referenced about skull experiment and Baki for the next episode. So we were already talking about how psychic audible phenomena is transitioning through equipment and in forms of transplacement as well. Absolutely. So it's just so strange for it to happen when we've been talking about it. It was very odd.
Yeah, I'm always one to look at the why now as primary to the phenomenon that we're looking at. And you're absolutely right. And this is why I wanted to play the 1-minute clip for y'all. The first piece where the context was, we were talking about one of the non-speaking autistic individuals named Jean Paul, who did pass away at the age of 16. And there was a whole episode around how he was apparently able to psychically link up with his friends that he had been conversing with on the hill from the other side. In other words, a spirit voice coming from the other side. This is what we were talking about. And that's precisely when this happened. And yes, as Steve mentioned, guys, the next episode, which we recorded on the same day, I think I'm going to get it up for next week, deals with this very phenomenon that we may have witnessed. And that is using things like EVP and instrumental transcommunication to bring through spirit voices, which is not new technology, but
it's like a pre-example to what the video's coming. So anyway,
Exactly.
isn't it? It's so weird. It's like here's an example prior to the video coming out. And it was so weird. But you know what? I'd looked into software and things like this time and time again. In the early days when things came out, they weren't shielded too well. So you get like things coming through, taxi radios and things like that. Not now. Not with the specialized stuff, the software they're using now. In fact, we got some details from StreamYard regarding unusual sounds that might come through.
Let me put this up for y'all to see. I don't know if you can see this, Steve. Can you read from there?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
why don't you go ahead and read it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it says StreamYard is designed to capture audible from microphones and audio inputs, and it is not known, quote, not known to have the ability to pick up phantom voices or other non-physical audio. StreamYard focuses on capturing live audio from users and participants. If you are hearing phantom voices in your StreamYard stream, it's likely due to other factors. Of course, they don't want to get into those other factors, but they're just laying it straight, saying, "Do you know what? It doesn't happen." So that's an extra thing to sort of say, okay, all right, so what was it? And how did it happen?
Right.
So strange.
Is there a technical term for phantom voices, or is it just sort of a figurative term that describes something technical?
It falls under paraacoustics. I mean, it's the way that phenomena can transition vocal responses or contact through various different pieces of equipment. It could be cameras, it could be the dictaphones, the days of EVP, and it could have been old radios and TVs, the days of instrumental transcommunication. And now they've upped the ante to computer programs, computer software, and audible recordings and live streaming as well.
I dare say, since the advent of digital communication through first our televisions went from analog to digital broadcasts, and then invariably to the multiple devices that we use, the instances of anomalous phenomena showing up, not just audibly, but visibly, have gone up. And I know you know this a ton. We both have witnessed anomalous phenomena of various kinds through these shows that we've done, and even using our cameras on location and filming. As a matter of fact, in the UK, I think you and I spoke about that. Again, guys, we want to caution: we're not jumping to conclusions here, but let's listen to it again. Y'all want to hear it again? Let's play it again and see. Let me see. I'm going to play the amplified version. Let's listen to this one more time. Episode 9, where I think I have the name of it here. Telepathy across dimensions. I believe episode 9, where I think I have the name of it here. Telepathy across dimensions. I think I have the name of it here. Okay.
It does sound like it does not sound like an adult. It does sound like childlike.
Absolutely.
Which is interesting because we're kind of talking on that subject at the time.
We're talking about children.
But all the evidence that we've had given to us and provided and obtained over the last 10 years shows that paraacoustics crosses all platforms. There are no boundaries as to how they can utilize pieces of equipment and technology, even modern day stuff, to be able to convey or converse some type of verbal response.
Do you think we could have been hearing from this camp, if you will, from these individuals from the Hill? Do you think we could have perhaps inadvertently tuned into the Hill? I'm just putting it out. I mean,
I know what you're saying, but I'm sure there are people out there that have captured similar responses and heard similar things. And when they hear it, they'll go, that does sound like that tone, that because it tends to be a certain tone to these things coming through. And I'm sure people have captured things like this, and we'd love to hear, obviously, your opinion about that. But all we want to do is illuminate the fact that there is possibly something anomalous that's taken place here. And it's definitely for us, and the work that we both do, Alexis and I, we'd be irresponsible not to highlight this, to be honest with you, just to overlook it, because it stuck in your mind, which is interesting, Alexis. It immediately alerted me as well. So I count on those things. Why are we being alerted to this? And I thought to myself, It's
Well,
odd. Yeah.
I will share that for again, if you haven't seen the telepathy tapes, everyone, please do yourself a favor and do it not for the novelty of it. I want to put this on the record, Steve, because as paranormalists, if you will, sometimes we can be accused of being a little too curious for the novelty of it. And that's
Yes.
not at all what this is about. This is potentially a breakthrough in understanding the very nature of reality and of
Mm.
ourselves. And when you listen to the telepathy tapes, there's a message that is evergreen throughout the podcast, and that is that these very intelligent, though non-speaking individuals are so anxious to have us the muggles, I think they call us, those that do
Yes.
speak, that don't have these gifts, to understand the capacity that truly does exist, that they possess. And in order to have more, not just empathy and compassion, but to really join forces with these non-speaking individuals, they've got a lot to share and a lot of beauty, I might add. So I've got to put that in there. As exciting as this is, what we think we witnessed, this is perhaps a little link in the chain of connecting to the broader public of, look, it's time for us to realize what's really going on, and what we call the invisible world. There are a lot of conversations going on, and every once in a while we get a glimpse of that, or an earful, if you will. So any final thoughts on this? We're going to keep it short and then have y'all listen again and again
Yeah,
and again.
I know you can listen to these things over and over. I find it difficult to understand the words. It does sound childlike and it sounds interruptive. In other words, it's very difficult to analyze actually, because you've got a cross anomaly here, because they're talking, you're talking, so you've got to bleed between the two. And I thought that was interesting because microphones and the way they act and stuff, and they're down to noise cancellation,
Mm-hmm.
which is normally if there's somebody walking past your room and talking, it would attempt to cancel that out, as what noise cancellation does. It's a studio microphone you're using. So
Right, right.
it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just to, and again, because of the way you and I are as researchers, the first order of business is process of elimination. I never jumped. I'm still not definitive on
No,
what happened, but what we can say for a fact is there were no other occupants in your space at the time, probably with this closed door. I'm in a sealed dedicated podcast studio. We do not have children. And my husband, I don't even know if he was in the house at the time, but he's on the other side of the house. Uh, period. It's an impossibility. Could
no,
there
it's
have been some?
anomalous.
Yeah. Could there have been some technical interference? Somehow, stranger things have happened. Could be. Could there be somebody listening in on our conversations? Now that could be another thing, given what we were talking about.
Yes,
Any word on
yes.
that, real quick?
Well, I've had these things before, but interestingly, they tend to happen when we're talking about the subject
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah.
about spirit communication. I mean, out of all the podcasts I do, if I'm talking about spirit communication, those are the ones that seemingly I've done. I've even done this whilst lecturing, and a radio came on and heard voices come through. It wasn't even plugged in. The audience were a bit freaked out at that, and I was a bit perplexed, to be honest. I think that they're around. I think that they have the ways of being able to communicate,
Yeah.
and I think that they cross the boundaries of all things, even electronic and digital here and now.
Absolutely. And I think again that the advent of not just the advent, but the advancement of digital technology has really acted as a catalyst to bring these otherwise invisible realms closer
Yes.
to us. So with that, listen, you know what I'm going to say. We must hear from y'all. What did you? And I'd love to hear from the audience. Were you able to make out what this individual may have been saying? This was definitely a person's voice, perhaps a child's voice. Could they have been saying John Paul? I thought about that. I don't know. Let us hear from you. We want to keep this conversation going. And again, whatever the case, and for whatever reason, it will perfectly segue to the next segment of UAP and Beyond next week, where we'll be talking about this very subject. So there you have it. Steve Mera, the plot thickens, doesn't it?
It really does. And this is why I love the subject so much.
Me too. And I'm glad to be doing it with you. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. Until next time, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Take care.